What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the entire planet that typically has nothing whatsoever to do with homesteading off the grid. Now, technically, I did do some homesteading in between the last video I made about 4 or 5 hours ago and this one. My beautiful bride, Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, and I cleaned out our quail cage, and yet another one got away, those things. But here's the good news. They're indigenous to this part of the world anyway, and we've had a few get away in the last 6 months, and we typically see them again at some point. I actually caught one on one of my trail cams down here, so they prosper, and they'll probably outlive the ones in captivity. So, we're not put out about it. So you have asked, you have confirmed in the comment section that you want to hear my personal experience with some, to this day, I can't explain if it was strange alien technology that my entire gun truck and I witnessed, or if it was military weaponry being tested. I'm going to tell you the story, the facts as they are, and I'm going to let you decide. This will be the first time I ever told this story orally. The story is buried as fiction in my novel Owl of Capri, which you can get on Amazon and print or Kindle. You don't have to. I'm going to tell you the story here, but FYI, 90% of this book that I wrote when I was living down and out in the jungles of Mindanao, southern Mindanao in the Philippines, is fact. But I had to make it appear to be fiction because of NDAs and certain other things, certain secrets that I just didn't feel safe disclosing. But I do now. And again, with this particular experience, I never did have to sign an NDA. I think the way the powers that be tried to cover up our knowledge of what we saw was by lying to us and gaslighting us, which, gee, we're seeing quite a bit of lately, aren't we? With these drones and orbs and plasmic balls in the sky. Now listen, before I get to my story, I'm going to read you a couple of emails. They're not long. A couple of emails that came into the email address here at the channel, which is crazylake@mail.com. If you forget that, it's in the description box below. Again, share your stories of your abductions, your experiences with anything just out of the norm that you can't explain, that either you've told or you're scared to tell, you'd like to have a wider audience be aware of. I'll tell those stories for you. Again, if you want to remain anonymous, let me know that in your email, or if you tell your story in the comment section of the videos that we're posting, and we will leave you anonymous. Sounds like somebody started a chainsaw or something up there. Maybe. Some kind of motor in the middle of the woods. Stay tuned. I don't know what that's all about. Did you hear that? I hope that's not the mothership. All right, so I'm going to get to it. First email comes from Bonnie Rogers. So this is Bonnie Rogers' story. Bonnie writes, "Been watching your channel for a while now. My experience started in the early 1960s. I was out snowmobiling with my 2 cousins. We were pretty small, and all 3 of us could fit onto one snowmobile. We had a very large piece of property to ride on between my uncles and my father's. It was around 80 acres, some woods and some pasture. This particular day, we were riding along our horse pasture from her house to my dad's house along the fence line. We were doing a turn to head back towards her dad's house when out of nowhere, there was a huge circular craft that came out from the tree line." Makes me wonder, maybe I should stand up and let you folks watch this tree line. I clearly heard what sounded like an engine, as if something was trying to take off. I'm not seeing anything back there, are you? Okay, keep getting my 6. So, from out of nowhere, this huge circular craft came out from the tree line. There's no road back there, guys. That was a car horn, or something that sounded like a car horn. I remember gasping and hitting the throttle on the snowmobile, and my cousin, who was behind me, shoving her head into my back. From that point on, none of us have any memories of what happened. We were walking into my uncle's house, and it was dark out, and the clock said 11 p.m. No memory of even putting the snowmobile away. Nothing. It was like coming out of having surgery. Total brain fog. I was between 6 and 9 years old. It has plagued me all my life. I am 67 years old. This was only one of the experiences I've had throughout my life. Bonnie Rogers. You can see that, right? In the video from earlier today, somebody said, hey, I saw a video of yours the other day and you didn't have long hair. Yeah, I did. I just had it in a ponytail. I don't know what's going on back here behind me, but we need to pay attention. Let's see if I can raise this up some. I was facing the camera the other way so we could watch the sky in case anything was coming in for a landing or zooming by, but it sounds as if something may have already landed. All right. Patrick Grimmard's story. Patrick writes, hey, Merry Christmas and hope all is well with you and yours. I wanted to share an experience I had with you in hopes you may find it interesting enough to share with others. My reason for wanting to have this shared is that I've been desperate for answers since it occurred. I'm going to shorten this somewhat so that it is a little more shareable. My hope is that someone will have a relatable experience, as my story seemed to have been removed when I posted it on your video this morning. And see, this is what I'm talking about, what's going on. Someone or something does not want these stories getting out. If I would have removed that comment, I certainly wouldn't be reading the email right now, okay? I was driving across the state alone and had set my GPS to avoid major highways. I didn't mean to do this. It was after dark and I was on some farmland back roads. I saw a light come over the tree line that made me really nervous. That was the last thing I remembered before I suddenly woke up at a speedway almost 100 miles away and 2 hours later. I was completely terrified when I came to. I had no idea where I was, who I was, or how I got there. I was oddly parked in the parking lot, not in a way someone would typically park. There was a state trooper around 15 to 20 feet in front of me. After about 30 seconds of me coming to, he drove off and left. The first and only thing I could think to do was to call my brother. That was literally the only thing I knew about myself at that moment, was that I had a brother. And he has had some really odd experiences as well. He thought I was joking when I started asking him who I was and where I was. It took about 10 to 15 minutes for me to collect myself and for everything to sort of come back to me. I continued my trip from there and made it home. I don't know what happened to me. Doctors tell me medically something like that shouldn't have been possible. I submitted this story to the experiencer section of MUFON some years back, and they contacted me and took note of it. That experience messed me up for about 3 years after that. I've come to terms with the fact I may never know the truth, but I maintain hope that there is someone out there that has had something similar happen to them. This happened on a trip between Asheville and Jacksonville, North Carolina. Your latest video mentioned someone from North Carolina as well. I'd be interested to know where their experience happened if possible. My name is Patrick, and I give you my full permission to share this in whatever capacity you desire. Thank you for being the voice of those who need to be heard. I look forward to your upcoming videos and hearing other stories. Patrick, thank you so much for submitting your story to us. That's a tractor starting up on the farm across the road from me. For those of you who have followed this channel for a long time, you know that we have had some extremely strange things happen on this property, and I'm starting to wonder how much of it might have to do with these drones and orbs and plasmoids, and how much of what may be going on right now has to do with me telling stories that folks don't want to have told. But with that said, I've shared the 2 emails like I said I would, and now like I said I would, here's my Christmas gift to all of you. I'm going to share my experience with you that happened in Iraq. Everything I'm going to tell you is fact. This is exactly how it happened. I can't make sense of it. This happened, I was in Iraq in 08 and 09. This would have been sometime in 2009, because we came home September of '09. So this happened about 2 months before the deployment was over. So it would have been about June. So when I was there, I was part of General Petraeus's surge. This is when we went in and just overwhelmingly overpowered the Al Qaeda in Iraq forces. They were Al Qaeda in Iraq's. We were in Mosul. That's where I got this souvenir. I got this hat, back injury, tinnitus, and PTSD as souvenirs. Okay, Mosul was Al Qaeda in Iraq's last urban stronghold. Now, there was an election and Barack Obama won, and he pretty much said he was going to pull all the troops out of Iraq as soon as he got in office. So basically what the Al Qaeda in Iraq terrorists did is they went up and they took safe haven in Syria. And they pretty much sat right across the border and sat down on their butts and laughed at us and said, ha, ha, ha. You know, your new president, who is more in support of us than he is, you know, you, the American troops, are going to take you guys out of here. And the minute he does, we're going to come back down there in Iraq and just start killing and murdering everybody again. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly what happened. He got into office, pulled us out, and then Al Qaeda in Iraq, who had been safe harboring in Syria, went right back down to Iraq and started murdering everybody. But the Obama administration gave them a different name. They called them ISIS. So that way, the sheeple who take what they see on legacy news media as fact thought it was an entirely new, different terrorist group. But it wasn't. It was the same people that we were obliterating and had on the run, had them down for the count until Obama said, you know, told him the game plan, and so they just waited us out until he pulled us out, and then they came right back down. Gave him a different name. It's similar to when Philip Morris had a bad reputation because of the cigarette lawsuits. Well, they just changed their name to Altria. A couple of years later, nobody knew it was the same company. It's kind of like how Facebook, when they got caught selling all of our information to China, because Mark Zuckerberg could make some money off of doing it, got a bad reputation. They decided to, Zuckerberg decided to call the company Meta. A couple of years later, nobody knew. Same thing with ISIS. ISIS was Al Qaeda in Iraq. Okay, so anyway, we got about 2 months to go. They're over there sitting on the other side of the Syrian border, waiting us out. We're convoying. I was a machine gunner for a convoy security team. We would take 100 empty tractor trailers every night from Mosul up to the border of Turkey. It was like the tri-state area. We could see Turkey, Syria, and Iran all from our vantage point there in the northernmost point of Iraq. The next night, we would take 100 fully loaded tractor trailers back down to Mosul. We would have a machine gun truck every 10 tractor trailers to provide support because we were the main supply line into Iraq. They were trying to get us because, hey, you want to defeat an army, you do it through the stomach. You take out the supply chain and you win. So one night we were trucking up to a place called Zakko, up in Kurdistan, the autonomous region of Iraq. A lot of folks up there are Christians. They're not of the Islamic faith. Got to watch even how you say that term on social media. Depends on what kind of mood social media is in. Might get canceled just for using a term that was used for centuries until somebody determined it was offensive a few years back. So anyway, I'm in the turret. We had a driver. I was an E4 specialist. The driver was an E4 specialist, and then we had our truck commander called a TC. He was an E6 staff sergeant. All of a sudden, from the left, I see what appears to be tracer rounds coming right at our truck. Now, here's the weird thing about tracer rounds. They are always like chartreuse neon green, right? And I think when we're on the range, and it's been a while, I've been out of the military for like 15 years. It's like every 10th round is a tracer. So when you're on the range at night, or if you're in a firefight at night, you can see every 10th round coming out. So you can kind of, Kentucky windage your aim if you need to, because it's dark. You can't see a lot of other stuff. So I see tracer rounds coming at us from the left, but the tracer rounds were purple. They were fluorescent purple, much like the plasmoidic orb I caught on my trail cam here back in November. They didn't look like jellyfish. They looked like tracer rounds coming at me. So I yell, contact left, to my truck crew. I spin my turret, getting ready to go. It was about the 9 o'clock position. Our driver looks over. He says, contact left. He confirms it. He says, confirm contact. So our truck commander, the staff sergeant who's in charge, gets on the comms, and lets the entire convoy know we've got contact. This is rear gun truck number 10, because I was a rear gunner. And so they stop. I go to return fire, and it stopped. I can't see where it's coming from. Now listen, you can't just start spraying and praying, because that's how civilians get taken out. They call it collateral damage. It's going to happen, but you do your best. And there was a couple of times I made sure not to be overzealous, and I'm glad that that's the case, because on my part, there was no collateral damage by way of civilians, but it had just stopped. But now let me back up just another second. These tracer rounds, as they were coming in as if they were coming right at the turret, and then probably 30 or 40 yards away before they hit the truck, they went straight down. So they're coming in like this. Imagine my head is the turret, like straight down, almost as if we had some sort of force field around us. My driver saw this too. The TC, the truck commander, he saw it as well. Okay, so I never returned fire. But there was a truck called the scout truck, and this guy's job, he was in the middle of the convoy. His job was to, if one of the trucks took contact, was to either go back to where that truck was or to go up in the convoy where that truck was to provide support fire. Well, he comes flying back to provide support fire, pulls right up beside us, and he's like, where's his contact? And we're like, and this guy was an E6, he was a staff sergeant. I'm like, Sergeant, it's ceased. There's no more contact. They say, okay, you said it was from the left, right? I'm like, yeah. He's going down the side of our gun truck, and there's not a single ding or hole, and it was an up-armored vehicle, so it would, trust me, it wouldn't have pierced this armor. But there's no indication that our truck was ever hit. And he calls that out across the comms, and he says, you guys weren't hit. I said, well, yeah, they never hit us. And they said, why did you say contact? And I said, because I saw the tracer rounds coming, but 40 yards before they hit the truck, they went straight down. My driver confirmed it. My truck commander, who was of equal rank as this guy, confirmed it. And then the guy just goes off on us. The scout sergeant. He's one of these guys that knew so much about military, the ins and outs of the military. You'd think he was one of these history buffs, but he wasn't. He was knowledgeable through experience. He goes off on us, and he tells us a couple of things that I actually wasn't aware of at the time. Number one, the U.S. military is the only military in the world that actually has tracer rounds, at least at that time. Our enemies didn't have them, or at least the terrorist networks that we were fighting in the Middle East did not have tracer rounds. Number two, all tracer rounds, as I mentioned to you earlier in this story, which is fact, Jack, are fluorescent green, like chartreuse green. They're not purple. So right off the bat, he thinks we're lying. He's telling us we're all liars. Why would you do that? Why would you guys concoct this story? So when that convoy mission was over, we got called in front of the guys higher up than him who were on convoy. They were all pissed off at us. Like, why? What are you doing out there? Are you guys that bored that you're going to fake a contact incident? And our E6 was speaking on our behalf, and he told the E7 and the first sergeant, said, this is what we saw. This is what happened. So our leadership decided that we had combat stress, that we didn't see what we had seen, what we said happened did not happen, and we were ordered to go to get some, like I alluded to in previous videos, get some rest for 5 days. What that meant was we went to the psychological holdover facility. And this is where people who were cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs because of stuff that was just happening on the deployment or stuff that was happening back home while they were on deployment, wives leaving them for their best friends, cleaning out the bank account, selling the cars, taking the kids, all this stuff. And we were supposed to be getting rest, but basically we had to go to PowerPoint presentations. It was oh man, I would have rather been on deployment. Or I mean, not on deployment, but on mission. Taking small arms fires and hitting IEDs. That's just how terrible this stuff was. So our last day there, we were visited by a chaplain. Okay, I mentioned yesterday, what do you call the preachers, the clergymen in the military? It slipped my mind. And a lot of the veterans and active duty folks out there mentioned it was chaplain. So it was a chaplain. So this chaplain comes in, and he's talking to 10 or 20 of us that were getting rested that week. And he was witnessing to us. He was talking about Jesus Christ and laying down his life so that, you know, all who believes could be forgiven and have eternal life in heaven with God the Father and all this stuff. And then he says, you know, he said he wanted to prove that there's a God, and there was a way he could prove that there was a God. And I mean, I was listening. I was hearing the guy out. I was brought up in whatever. I was brought up with a religious background, and it was another story for another time. If you read my latest book, Utopia Shattered, there's a story in there called An Altar Boy's Confession where you hear all about it. And I read it on this channel a few weeks ago. I'm not going to get into it now. But the chaplain told a story about another unit. It wasn't our unit. He tells this story of a unit who is out on combat patrol who suddenly comes under small arm fires from both sides. So these guys get ambushed. This one particular gun truck gets ambushed, and they're seeing these tracer rounds coming in. But about 30 or 40 yards before they hit their truck, the tracer rounds go straight down to the ground, almost as if their truck had a magical force field around it. Okay, so the chaplain attributed that magical force field to God. He said clearly the folks in that gun truck were Christians, they were believers, they had confessed their faith in Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and so he, with a capital H, was taking care of them. And he did not let those rounds, as they were coming in, touch their truck. Instead, he diverted them straight down. Me, my driver, and our truck commander looked at each other like with big eyes, like WTF, but we didn't say anything about it. We didn't say a word about it. We talked about it later. We never told that chaplain that we had experienced the exact same thing. We talked amongst ourselves, and by this point, we completely had zero trust in our leadership. They were terrible. Listen, my first 4 months in Iraq, they didn't even pay me. And on top of that, they wouldn't even let me go to the payroll department to inquire as to why I wasn't being paid. Our lieutenant, he was about 5'5". He had a complete Napoleonic complex. He was insecure as all get out, and he was just a D word. What's short for Richard? Yeah, that's him. So anyway, he was abusive. He abused his power. I'm going to bite my tongue at that point. But so we weren't the only unit, is the point I'm getting at, who had that experience. Okay? Another unit had that same experience. Now, was it the hand of God? Folks who are firm in their faith might say yes. I'm not going to say that I'm not firm in any sort of faith, but what I will tell you is what I've mentioned before in other videos. I'm an objectivist. That's a philosophy set out by author Ayn Rand, and objectivism basically states that you make decisions or you come to conclusions based upon logic and reason, not emotions, not superstitions. And that's not to knock people who are strong in their faith, saying that, you know, religion is superstition. What we saw, what we witnessed, could not be explained logically. Now, there's 3 ways you could go with that said. You could take that leap of faith and go down the road of faith and say, hey, it was the hand of God. You might say, perhaps it was our powers that be testing some sort of secret weapon system, perhaps a secret defense system on our own troops. I don't know. You might want to talk to the Marines from Camp Lejeune about that. So many of the things that we've always said only other people's governments would do, we've kind of found out that ours have done and are doing. There's a big train of thought out there right now believes that these drones we're seeing is all some sort of setup to make sure we do not see a peaceful transition of power on Inauguration Day, January 20. Perhaps these things will be used as an excuse to be able to implement martial law so that power is not transferred. Just saying. And then thirdly, could there somehow have been powers from other worlds, otherworldly powers that were involved in that scenario? Because again, it's a pretty good philosophy that these visitors from other worlds, visit us in times of extreme duress on Earth. There are often more sightings during wars, and that's what reminded me of this story the other day when I was telling you about this, mentioned this in another video. World War I, World War II, even going back to the Civil War, there were sightings of these things, but then when there's no war, the sightings drop off to a great degree. It could be any of those three things, or it could be something completely and entirely different. I don't know. But that is the actual factual experience I had in Iraq, with something that today I can't explain. I have no answers for it. I did not have to sign any sort of non-disclosure agreement on that I wouldn't tell that story. I just, for many years I'll admit it, I was scared. But I'm not scared to tell these stories anymore. And I've got a lot more stories that I've never told that I'm not scared to tell anymore. I'm an older man. I'm over 50. I'm in my 50s. I'm financially independent. I don't need anybody. It's like why I'm not scared of the trolls here. That's why I don't have any problem coming out here and telling your stories for you. You can tell me how stupid I am. Tell me how ignorant I am. Tell me I'm a crazy guy and I need to adjust my meds. I'm on 0 meds. I'm 51 years old. My medication is healthy diet, exercise, and I do not abuse substances. I don't use tobacco products. I'm high on life. I don't need nothing, brah. But I'm not scared anymore. I can take care of myself. You could eliminate me from social media. My bills will still get paid because, number one, I don't have very many of them because I'm not stupid with money. I'm not materialistic. I'm not consumeristic. I don't have mountains of debt like the yuppies. I'm not scared. I'm not scared. So I am prepared to tell more of my stories, and I am absolutely prepared to tell more of yours. So you send them to me to the channel. You can email me at crazylake@mail.com is the email address. Buy me a coffee if you'd like. The link's in the description box below, but you don't have to. I know times are tough. Hopefully very, very, very soon, this economy is not going to suck as much as it has in the last 4 years. And with all that said, I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I want to thank each and every one of you for sharing your stories with me. I want to try to figure out what the heck was making that noise back here in my woods. If I find out, I'll let you know. If I don't, I won't waste your time. See you for more next time. Hopefully. I don't know if you saw it. It actually wasn't like a UFO or anything, but there was like a dozen deer standing there listening to me talk. All right. See you next time for the most awesomest homesteading channel on the planet that has nothing whatsoever to do with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid.